Welcome to the Connected Campus podcast, where we explore the ways that diverse professionals are working every day to optimize their efforts to recruit, retain, and graduate their students.
Episode here, as we were settling in, I kind of had a realization. This is one of our first live episodes of somebody working at a community college for the podcast so far. So as we're recording this is kind of a treat. And also that there's some, which you'll probably hear in the professional background of our guests, sort of very few degrees of separation in our backgrounds and stuff. So it's just kind of fun that it's like somebody who we kind of have shared experiences and perspectives in our backgrounds is always a treat. I feel like it's like that's somebody who lives in Delaware or went to, Rutgers in this case, where I went to grad school and everything. It's just nice to have that. So I will stop here and let our guests introduce themselves as we always do to kind of kick us off. So Ian, if you want to just kind of introduce yourself, where you are now, kind of your professional background, how you got to be where you are today.
Awesome. Well, thank you for having me, Dustin. My name is Dr. Ian Wolf, and currently I'm the Assistant Dean for Student Engagement at Passaic County Community College in northern New Jersey, New York City metro area. We're actually located in the heart of downtown Paterson, New Jersey. And just to give a little bit about my professional background, I have a Bachelor's of Arts in History, as well as a Master's of Arts in Education from Rutgers, both degrees from Rutgers University in New Brunswick. So while our times at Rutgers University didn't necessarily overlap as graduate students, I certainly remember the name Dustin, and your name and your reputation certainly speak for yourself at Rutgers. So I got both of those degrees in 2014 and 2016, and then I started my professional journey working at Bergen Community College, a community college in northern New Jersey as well, as the coordinator of student conduct and information. While I was at Bergen, I utilized one of the nice perks and benefits in higher education and went on to get my EDD, my Doctorate of Education, at Manhattanville College in Westchester County, New York, in educational leadership. So I'm forever grateful to Bergen for that perk. And then after that, I migrated down the not New Jersey Turnpike, the Garden State Parkway, actually, to Brookdale Community College, which is the County College of Monmouth, so the northern Jersey Shore area, where I was the Director of Student Conduct and Compliance. And that brought me back up to North Jersey, to Passaic County Community College, where I've been here for almost a year as the Assistant Dean for Student Engagement. And I oversee the areas of student activities, so our clubs and organizations, as well as our student government, which also includes civic engagement and community service, as well as our athletics program, which includes our intercollegiate sports, our fitness center, physical wellness programming, and intramurals. So my job has been to weave these areas together to create a new center for student engagement. And the last thing that I'll say just about my personal background is I'm always for the betterment. So when I'm looking to create new things, be a change agent, I'm always looking, how can I make the process better or make the student experience better for students in whatever community it is that I serve.
Yeah, it's great as just sort of a very simple, clear kind of guiding philosophy. Because that's even just I sort of have a similar thing of I've lived in various apartments and even owning my first home. It's it probably won't be here forever, but anything I'm putting into this is just for the better. It's, going to leave it better than I found it. The next person will sort of benefit from my kind of taking care of the space and caring for it. And I can certainly, sort of in your case, it's okay, the work that I do, I want it to sort of just be, sort of, I assume, I guess, sort of that sort of cycle of continuous improvement, always kind of looking at things and, better as sort of this word that kind of can kind of carry a heavy meaning when you sort of carry it that way. That's really great. And I guess that's sort of a clarifying thing. We've had a few folks, with doctorates in the past, but you obviously have been so immersed in higher education, got your doctorate, like you said, while you're working and sort of carrying that with you. How has that sort of helped sort of shape your experience, or even just the sort of simple idea of what kind of compelled you towards getting that credential? Because that's obviously what I know helps uplift somebody to be in a position like yours, where you can kind of see the whole ecosystem at an institution and trying to make everything work better together. and that sort of thing. So I guess, yeah, what was that sort of part of your journey like of getting your doctorate?
Yeah, so I would say it was really twofold for me. The first being just from a pragmatic point of view, more and more terminal degrees, so PhD or EDDs, not really JDs, but certainly the first two that I listed are important when it comes to rising up the ranks in terms of progressive leadership in the higher education space. So I definitely knew that I wanted at some point to pursue that terminal degree after I got my master's degree. And I also knew that I didn't want life to stop. So I knew that I needed to start and finish a doctorate pretty much so before really allowing uh, too much growth in my family to take place. So I will admit I had to put some life things on hold while I was getting a doctorate so that I could focus on them in the years that have happened since then. For me, it was a little bit about timing of when do I want to immerse myself in this academic degree that really you have to be all in and you have to make sacrifices for. So that was one piece of it. The second piece of it was I really wanted to know what are the higher level things when it comes to how higher education institutions tick, and specifically how do community colleges function at a level that maybe I wasn't seeing as an entry level and becoming a mid-level professional. So I was exposed to those higher level concepts that I don't think I would have seen by just having the work experience right away. So I would say it's sort of like warp speed allowed me to really immerse myself and learn about the community college sector in a unique way where I was scaffolding my coursework with my professional experiences.
Well, and I'm sure, yeah, just for your kind of guiding philosophy, like getting it early and it sort of being with you as you move onward and upward and everything is just like, yeah, it's going to enable you to, because I think it's like you can get the kind of equivalent knowledge or insight, I'm sure, just by working for a while. But it's like, yeah, I'm probably kind of getting some bumps and bruises or sort of overlooking things and having some blind spots as I'm kind of navigating my career. So, yeah, the fact that you did it like, relatively early comparatively, and that you, yeah, I get part of me is that like you did it while you're working, which I think, in my point of view, is like the way to try to manage it. And certainly you just kind of, like you said, went all in and just kind of try to get through it quicker than I think like some other people where it's like, oh yeah, I was taking like one class at a time for 6 or 7 years. And it's like, that's great that you were able to accomplish that goal. It's just like, that's hard in its own way. That kind of sacrifice where it's like, you're kind of biding your time for so long of just sort of like, okay, slow and steady. We're just sort of like, you know, going through this. So, yeah, that was just kind of a personal curiosity, I guess. That's sort of part of your journey, which is like an amazing accomplishment. So just way to go. And,
Yeah.
obviously, yeah, every institution since certainly benefits from that. And you've been at many community colleges, just sort of like writ large for your whole career. And I'm curious, as you are holding this sort of made up title of like the first person like currently working in the space at community college and everything, I'll sort of sit with this for a little bit of like, working at so many different community colleges, how is your experience compared when it comes to education technology? Because I think even just like, again, for my own sake, it's an area that I don't know how much it's the same, how much it's different, and how maybe there's a variety between the institutions or anything like that. So take that question as you will, just ed tech at community colleges. What has been your experience so far?
Yeah. So first, I would just like to add one of my philosophies as it relates to community college students. This is largely a generalization, but I think that at a community college as a professional, you have the most room for student growth and development, where students don't come in with the same skill sets. This is largely a generalization, but don't come in broadly sweeping with the same type of skill sets that students that might start at your large state institution do have. So with that, I think that there's a lot of coaching up. And I will say that for my almost decade in the community college sector, I think that there has been a lot of advances from an ed tech perspective where, if you were to ask me 10 years ago, what was it like, the portal experience at the community college that I was at that point in time, I would say that it doesn't really carry any weight compared to what's going on right now. You log into the portal and hey, maybe it's a name change or maybe it pops out to the academic catalog, but really there's not much in terms of interaction or engagement going on. So I would say that being at three different community colleges, sure, their location is different, where two of them were suburban, one of them is a very, very urban institution. All of them had a lot of work that needed to be done in getting their educational technology and the tools where students could engage up to speed. So I would say that, with that, having a vibrant student portal for engagement and effective communication is really essential to meet community college students where they're at now more than ever, where at community colleges, this is my experience, it may not be everyone's experience, but prior to the pandemic, a lot of things were still done pen and paper. Oh, you need to do a verification form, or you need to change a class, or you need to add and drop, or for employees, you need to do physical timesheets. Those, up until only a couple of years ago, were pen and paper on perforated forms where they had to be submitted in a physical location on campus. And that has really changed from an edtech perspective, which I know is not necessarily something totally related to Pathify, but I think it speaks to just the culture that community colleges really have in warp speed upgraded themselves to really be electronic in nature in this digital way.
Yeah, I mean, that'll definitely segue to my next question. And I think it is like ed tech as sort of this like, air quoted kind of term. It's like it can mean a lot of things. Like sometimes it is just the things that an institution is leveraging to do the business of just like an organization. Yeah, like timesheets or, workflows that staff and faculty are doing, but then certainly, what the students are interacting with. And I feel like my impression at times as I've sort of like come in and out of orbit in different spaces, like community colleges suffer from the same problem that like institutions do with like online students and all that. Like there's this presumption that like, oh, they're commuters, they're adult learners, they don't want to engage in all that. And that's just maybe been where there is some sort of neglect when it comes to leveraging really powerful uh, tools with modern interfaces and all that. It's like you're either going without as an organization, as an institution, or, you know, kind of overclocking a tool that's maybe past its expiration date, but I think, yeah, like certainly in the scope of our conversation, you can kind of follow a thread, certainly of, portals is that thing where I think why, we sort of like hit for people or resonate with people is that like it is such a like outwardly facing, it's a very kind of prominent figurehead to sort of follow kind of digital transformation that's happening in institutions. And that idea of like once you start investing in it and trying to create more engaging digital environments for students, you start to see that they've been craving it, or they didn't even really know what they were missing and are really benefiting from just being able to more easily search and find information or connect with other students and all that kind of stuff. So focusing in on where you are right now, but carrying through kind of the digital transformation topic, how have you seen digital transformation playing out at Passaic County Community College?
So Pathify came to Passaic County Community College in the summer, so August of 2020, and it was largely a Band-Aid solution because the college needed some way besides just email to interact with their student population. So I believe, I wasn't at the institution at the time, but I believe it was a very quick rollout of Pathify's portal for our students here. And what that means is that a lot of the various functionalities of Pathify were not either turned on. What can we do as the basics just to make sure that there's a way that students can communicate? And it was not really built out in summer of 2020. And so, we needed to, when I started, we needed to really beef up what we were using our portal for to make sure that we were effectively engaging with students. So in terms of thinking about the portal, I would just like to quote one of the heavy hitters in Pathify, Joe Mancini, who's the executive director of IT at Montgomery County Community College. One of the things that I heard him say recently was view Pathify as a student engagement and a communication tool first, and then as a portal second. So with that, that's one of the themes that really resonates with me of how can we engage students on this platform instead of it just being a portal to navigate somewhere else off of the portal, whether it be to Blackboard or another learning management system or Microsoft 365 or Google Educate, whatever it looks like. So to see that digital transformation play out, one of the examples that I would use is our portal. We've gone from having the activity feed, which folks might come to think of as like the Facebook activity feed that happens. We've moved from when people log into the portal, have it be that activity feed, to now it being a dashboard, which is specifically and intentionally curated with widgets, as well as upcoming major campus events that students can engage with in a more concise and rational manner, as opposed to just having to scroll through a Facebook-esque kind of feed to figure out, okay, this might be for me in terms of a program, and maybe this is the person I need to reach out to in terms of getting my financial aid question addressed, but I'm not totally sure. So I think that has really helped us streamline a lot of things. And what I would also say in terms of digital transformation, our institution, Passaic County Community College, has recently signed a 5-year contract with Pathify, where we are undergoing a change in ERP, where we're moving from being a Aleutian school to being an anthology school. But we do have a 5-year contract with Pathify to remain as our quote unquote portal company that we're using. So I'm really, really intrigued to see what the future holds in terms of our relationship with Pathify, as well as how Pathify is really taking a lot of strides right now to do some integrations with Anthology to make sure that it can help serve the student experience that is needed now and in the next couple of years moving forward.
Well, I appreciate all the kind words, and honestly, even just kind of the transparency about kind of how you all are working through everything. And the shout out to the Joe Mancini. He's a very good friend of Pathify, and we'll get him on the show here soon. But yeah, I mean, I think that idea of digital transformation, almost just like taking the transformation piece of just sort of like how your perspective and just utilization of a tool like Pathify has kind of matured over time, where it's just like, yeah, it's just a place where students can go and, maybe they're communicating with each other, we're communicating with them, but it's like even that paradigm shift of like the feed, which is so communication based, versus the dashboard, which is just presenting such a holistic kind of snapshot in that dashboard of all the things that are going on. And that can be kind of curated for particular populations of students, and then the students themselves can say, I want more of this, less of that, and all. Like, it's just, that is sort of an idea of like, I don't certainly give you all kudos, like that you got this going so early in the pandemic, where like obviously that was kind of the catalyst of this wave of digital transformation that we're still sort of seeing like kind of ripple out, and kind of whether sort of kind of reverberations, whatever kind of metaphor you want to use, of like that big paradigm shift. Is that I know some institutions, and like totally get it, totally empathize, like there was that major change and they're sort of fatigued after it, but like that you all are kind of still carrying that banner forward and trying to kind of just kind of deepen and evolve, and all these other kind of action words that were sort of like ringing in my head, because I think that's what I'm trying to keep an eye on, is like how much our institutions saying like, okay, what we did before was enough, let's just take a moment and pause. And it's like, again, get it, but I think they're definitely going to be kind of left behind by the folks who are just carrying through that momentum and that energy to keep sort of saying like, wow, this tool, whatever it is, like Pathify or anybody else, like, wow, this is great. How can we continue to expand and deepen and integrate and sort of like just streamline? Like, I just always love all these sort of like the verbs, the action words, the emotions, those things that are sort of what I think are really indicative of how digital transformation is sort of like happening, and what, again, sort of the guiding philosophies I think that people are keeping in their heads as they're looking at what they have, looking at where they want to go, how are we going to use these tools to get there and everything. So that's really great stuff. And yeah, I mean, it is that idea of like so much of kind of what you were just sort of kind of calling out there are just sort of like what we sort of love to celebrate, and how on one hand, like Pathify is a portion of an institution's sort of digital transformation, but then they make that whole process a little bit easier and everything. So it's good to kind of honor that as well. But I know, your focus, kind of student engagement, obviously you have a lot under your umbrella, and, Pathify is sort of influencing and sort of, impacting the work that you're doing. But like, even just sort of like broadening the scope, not even like necessarily just like Pathify specifically, but like, how do you see digital tools being an important asset when it comes to student engagement specifically? Again, I feel like the community college space is, it's its own unique environment and everything, but like what's the relevance of utilizing, really impactful digital tools for your work?
Yeah, great question. So I'd like to start. I'll just, shout out one of my former colleagues from Bergen Community College, Jared Farah, who told me this one. So community college students are the three C's, where they go car, campus, car. And we want to make sure that we have a way to not have that be the case on our specific campus and the way that students engage. So I really think it's important to meet students where they're at. None of this is groundbreaking information. We know where they're at and it's on their phones. So how can we connect with them and give them the value proposition to be like, hey, go and download the Panther Go app, which is the name of our portal, accessed through the phone. So we have to make it relevant to students to be able to come out, and that's making sure that when they land on the portal, hey, here are different ways that you can engage with us, where, for example, there's now a widget that tells students, okay, here's my account balance, where they're going to see whatever it is that they owe for that specific semester, or, hey, click this button to start a payment plan. And that really helps. And we've gotten feedback from our Bursars department that really more students are paying their bills on time or setting up a payment plan instead of going into delinquency for their student account. But I also think that it's important to recognize that not just at four-year institutions, but also at community colleges, more students are taking online classes than ever before. So how do we connect them when, talking to them about coming to a basketball doubleheader where our women's and then our men's team play? That's not really relevant to them. Okay, how do we make a post or create an event on our portal that highlights, okay, while you can't come to campus because maybe you have other things going on in your life, work or childcare, how can we connect you with the video stream that's going on for that basketball game that's taking place here, whether you watch it right now or you get the highlights of the game that night or the next day, making sure that we're able to connect with them. And then the last thing is, it's really important for students to have a space where they feel like they can engage with their fellow peers online. So one of the functions that we have is a group that it's really just set up as, a not an unmoderated, but a Reddit forum where students can ask questions of one another. And it does get pretty tricky because sometimes information that students respond with is not necessarily accurate. So we have a disclaimer up there that says this information is not been given by employees of the college, so take everything with a grain of salt. Obviously, it doesn't say exactly that, but really it's a way where students can have this digital town square and communicate with one another in ways that maybe they wouldn't have if they're only taking classes online and don't have a portal, or they're only taking classes in person and they only interact with the friends that they know or their classmates in class. It's another way that students, if they want to, can engage to get that student experience here at Passaic County Community College.
Yeah. I mean, it's all really great perspectives, and like part of what I'm hearing is kind of like personalization of like, different student bodies are going to need certainly like it's a big kind of chasm between like a fully online student who is, dozens and dozens of miles away versus like somebody who is coming on campus every day. And then just other, again, sort of like if you kind of deepen your usage and put in a lot more roles and stuff, you can personalize a lot more. But then just like, on principle, being mindful of the preferences and the needs of different populations. Because it can even be like, part of it is if it's like a student is like in their car, comes to campus, goes back to their car, it's like that can be fine, but we want for that to ideally probably be like the most smooth, seamless experience as possible. Because it's like, it sucks if it's like, oh, I'm going and there's no parking, or I gotta like, if it's like the bus schedule or something, it's like, hey, that's cool. If you're just like, in commute and trying to get here at the right times and everything, like we want to try to support you, and having that information. And the joke that I thought of, as I'm sure some people have thought this, is like you said, it's like, people on their phones, that's where they're going if they need information, really on demand. And the idea that like, well, people have email on their phone, right? It's like, Yeah, but they're also getting a lot of emails about a lot of things. So the
Yep.
idea that, you got the app, the campus app, you can, look up the information there. And even that idea, like you said, where peers helping each other, you'd prefer that maybe it's like, oh, they're kind of getting like 80% of the way there, but like it's better than them just like trying to make decisions in a vacuum. Cause it could be even that idea where it's like the perfect situation where somebody's like, oh, how do I do X, Y, or Z? Another student is like, oh, you should probably go reach out to this like they're not giving them the answer. They're giving them the answer or the place to go for the answer, and those sort of things. So it's just like that idea that they could be like, oh yeah, I had the same problem. This is how I resolved it and all that. Um,
hmm
so yeah, I mean, it's like you're creating those spaces that hopefully can just create a more supportive environment, even just amongst peers, or even can just be the catalyst for people to make those connections to then have their communication take place elsewhere. But yeah, I mean, it's just so crucial, I think, is to have that sort of that hub, that nexus that is, like you said, that sort of gathering square that uh where so much can happen, so much information can be shared, whether it is just what you've sort of presented or communication happening amongst various folks. So um yeah, it's good to hear, I guess, that like the way that you're thinking about it, the impacts and outcomes that you're seeing, you know, from 30,000 feet, I guess, at least it is very similar to what other higher institutions are sort of grappling with and thinking about. But like, obviously the dynamics and the population and some of the different, details are a little bit different. So, I appreciate you kind of sharing what your experience has been.
Yeah, the only thing that I would just add is the content of what students are asking and engaging with at a community college is probably different from what they might be at a bachelor's degree granting institution. I've only been a student at a bachelor's degree granting institution. I've never actually worked at one, but the conversations at Passaic on the portal are largely centered around how do I pay my bill? How do I add or drop a class? Who do I need to see in terms of an academic advisor? Um, selling graduation tickets because we have a specific number of people who can attend based on one student graduate. So I'd like to think that those are things that are maybe a little bit more unique about a community college in terms of how students are engaging. It's not to say that they aren't engaging that way at a four-year institution, but it's more of like, how can I get these basic functions that I need to do done as a student, as opposed to necessarily engaging in a club or a sport or the student government. It's not to say that we're not going to get there, but right now I feel like in sort of hierarchy of needs, it's addressing those first level things that community college students need to do in order to persist and be retained.
Yeah. Well, and I'll say from years ago, my experience supporting graduate students, it was sort of a similar thing. And they're online graduate students. It's like, these absolutely are adult learners who are working, have families, and so they're really just looking for the transactional piece and all that. So it's like, and that's fine because like, I mean, there's not much else that you can necessarily engage with as a online graduate student, which again, that's sort of, a conversation for another time of just like, okay, maybe these students do want to like engage in like graduate student government and that should be more available at more institutions and stuff. But, that idea of like the example that you gave about removing a lot of sort of the clicks or friction points for paying your balance, like just knowing that that is something that you're going to get a lot of questions about, and you could cut that down a bit by just presenting it a lot more clearly on the dashboard, just first
Mhm.
and foremost. And that obviously like you all are incentivized to like get, tuition bills paid and stuff that is time well spent to be sort of supporting a integration like that. And that, yeah, it's just like if you can remove those friction points for the things that your students need and sort of keep plugged into what those are and what is it that they're needing. Yeah, it's just a great way to approach leveraging digital tools to create that kind of engaging environment for students. So on the other side, and I think this came up when we were kind of chatting beforehand about just sort of taking a pretty collaborative approach with your colleagues there when it comes to sort of leveraging various digital tools and everything. So if you want to just kind of speak to your sort of experience with that, of sort of not sort of going it alone, and you're working with sort of a coalition of folks there at Passaic.
Yeah, so it really has been a nice cross segment of departments at Passaic County that have been helpful in really making more efficient and optimizing the portal. And the approach that I take towards it is really a rising tide raises all ships, that there's no need to be possessive over the portal from my vantage point, or really from someone else's vantage point on campus. We're really trying to make the student experience for all PCCC students better. So no ego involved. Hey, here's an idea, might it work? Does it not work? Do you have a better alternative that we can bring to it? Let's just workshop different solutions that we can have to identified problems that students are having in terms of those friction points in various ways that they engage here on campus. So what I would say is a lot of it has been just soliciting feedback from various areas on campus, where it's great to get a student leader's input in terms of the portal, but I want to know the other student that maybe isn't a student leader, that is maybe that campus car student, or a student that is transient and has stopped out a couple times and restarted their education here at the local community college. What's working, what's not working at the portal, or in regards to the portal, and really just having those casual interactions on campus that really can help me to understand, okay, we got the students that are sipping the Kool-Aid in terms of how the portal should be used, but what about those students that are maybe tough to find, tough to get them to engage in any facet of college life or student life? What do they have to say about it? So it's really having these conversations and sort of rolling up your sleeves and knowing that if we really want to make this work, we have to meet students where they're at. And obviously it's more than just being on their phones. It's reaching out to the students that maybe don't feel that they have a voice, or that they can't lend an opinion or recommendation for how to make the technology that is their technology better. Obviously our team has consisted of information technology folks, people from our marketing and communications department, and student affairs. But if we need to reach out to other people for their opinions, we are not shy in doing so. And, we're not mind readers. We can only change things if we know that they need to be changed, but we're trying our best to continuously improve the student experience through the portal as our digital tool to get students and keep students engaged.
Yeah. And yeah, you're really only going to get so far if you're, I think, in an instance like this, like going alone, because it is such a nexus point. And I mean, just imagining for that example, which is such a good one, knowing that it's had good outcomes for you, is like a tuition bill, payment widget, and putting that right first and foremost is like, if you're almost too deeply engrossed and kind of like, being possessive, it's like, you could imagine that somebody in like a student engagement team would kind of overlook that, and like, or they maybe just wouldn't be as tuned in to sort of the feedback that they're getting, because it's just not in their sort of sphere of influence, or their kind of day to day. And just knowing that, like, yeah, like, let's leverage this to do sort of outreach and things that we might just be trying to like send via email. We can use it as a marketing tool. We can use it as a way for students to pay their bill. We can use it as a way to support students being supported and engaged, and all that. Like, just knowing that there's a lot of flexibility, and sort of the more that you kind of invest time and energy into the functionality of it, like, it's pretty deep, powerful, functionality for a lot of digital tools, really. But just not looking at it as like, okay, we have this thing that does the one thing and this other thing that does the one, like, and then it's all kind of disjointed. It's like, sure, if there are specialized tools that you want to use, go that route. But then it's like, you have to start to be thinking about, like, is this going to play nice with everything else that we have? Like, we can't just have this sort of off on an island, sort of doing its own thing. It needs to be able to sort of, be the payment platform that we're using that plugs into the portal. It needs to be a resource that can be served up in that place where students are going to be spending their time. That sort of digital town square, I guess I'll keep using that. I like that, sort of metaphor and stuff. But as we wind down, something that I've kind of almost challenged myself to do with a lot of our guests is like, looking at their background, doing a little, Google search and deep dives and stuff. Cause obviously, like, it's just a lot of amazing, cool, diverse people that are working every day, supporting students, and, riding the wave of digital transformation, and certainly things that, hobbies or other things that our guests are involved in. I think it all kind of intermixes and shapes our perspectives and everything. So for you, I found that you are involved in the New Jersey Wrestling Association and your fraternity, kind of dating back to your undergrad days and everything. So, they're kind of two unique
Mhm.
things, but like just generally, those are like, these persistent affinities, that have kind of shaped your life for a period of time. Like, what have those communities meant to you, and how do they kind of influence your day to day work today?
Great questions. And I like to talk about things outside of the professional work too. So the first one is New Jersey. It's actually New Jersey Wrestling Officials Association. And so for that, growing up, I was a wrestler and I wrestled through high school. And in college, I wasn't good enough to wrestle at the college level. So I thought, what's a way that I can give back to the sport that helped teach me a lot in terms of discipline, how to be a team player, and just really helped me grow and be, sort of break out of the shell of the shy person that I was really as a kid growing up. So, I stay connected really by officiating anywhere from middle school to high school, either varsity or junior varsity wrestling in the New Jersey area. And, it's great because it's good side hustle money. And I know that for a lot of folks working in student affairs, that's a big thing. But more important than that, it's a way for me to stay connected to the sport as well as get some like physical exercise during the winter months when it can be a little bit cold outside and tough to find ways to sort of stay physically fit. The other one is fraternity volunteering. And I was involved in my national fraternity when I was an undergrad at Rutgers University. And after graduating with my bachelor's, I really, got the bug of wanting to stay involved and help better the lives of other undergraduate men that came after me. So I took up the role of being the regional volunteer for my national fraternity, Sigma Pi International. The title was Province Archon. And for a lot of people that are not involved in Greek life, that just basically means regional volunteer. So it helped me stay connected to a lot of the chapters in the New Jersey, Eastern Pennsylvania, Delaware, and New York City area from 2014 up until earlier this year in 2023. And, I intentionally decided to take a step back from that role in earlier 2023 because my wife and I, we expanded our family and welcomed our first son into the world. So I knew that it was time where I had left my mark as a regional volunteer, and it was time really to become a more and more of a family man, more and more of a father figure to my son. So I feel like I paid it forward, and I still help out where I can. But my number one focus is now my nuclear and growing family.
Beautiful. Well, congrats. And yeah, I mean, that's like nearly a decade of, that's like a great title though, a Providence Archon. But yeah, I mean, that's something like with like University of Delaware, now that I live back near campus, like I've been getting more and more involved in sort of that same idea, like paying it forward, paying it back, and just trying to kind of build community, like as much for myself, but knowing sort of the space that I'm in as like, I've moved back after being away for a long time, and being a parent and all that. It's like, yeah, I'm just trying to like put in some roots and, build community. And it's like, so much of that is driven by volunteers, and even just sometimes it's just like, marketing and event planning, different things that you kind of get from that, or just sort of the value and the importance that you're putting on sort of like service and, helping others. And, yeah, it can all sort of intermix into sort of like our day-to-day lives, whether it is personal, professional and stuff. But yeah, and I guess, yeah, good clarification, because yeah, it's like the New Jersey Wrestling Officiating Association and everything, where it's like always just like there's associations for everything, and they're completely different groups. Like, don't get them mixed up. But yeah, I mean, and that's great. Yeah, I feel like it's so important to kind of have that involvement, or just sort of that, like those outlets, I guess, of just sort of like, especially like affinities that you have, you can kind of keep connected with it, or just sort of like, if it's like a creative thing or whatever, it's, yeah, just like you gotta have those hobbies. So that's great, and appreciate you sharing more about all that that you're involved with. But we will end here now with the question that we ask all of our guests, so take it as you will. Very curious to see how you take it. What does a connected campus look and or feel like to you?
So this was actually the toughest question for me to prepare for, and it really got, my mind racing of what does a connected campus look like? for me. And for me, what I came up with was it's a physical, temporal, and psychological space where students feel that they have access to the information and the support that they need to be successful, with the caveat that being successful has different definitions for different students. And then on top of that, having a space on campus where students feel that they have a sense of belonging, that they're understood and embraced. And I recognize that this is a very noble and a very abstract definition of what a connected campus looks like. But, as I wrote and prepared for this episode, I thought, this really needs to remain my North Star in terms of making sure that the good work that I'm doing, and, I'd like to think that I'm doing good work on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis, is really connected back to this definition of a connected campus. So thank you for asking that question, Dustin.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I appreciate, because I think you've maybe taken the most like academic look at and the abstract. It's like that. It's very true. Like an abstract for a paper, like kind of like really, grappling with the premise, because it does feel like it could be like a good, like, okay, this is the prompt, that you're writing a paper on, is like, what does a connected campus look like? And it's like, right, however many pages or whatever. But yeah, I mean, it the idea is that, like, I'm waiting for somebody to almost like have a super simplistic answer, because it's like, yep, that is true. You answered the question. Like, it's just like one sentence, but then it's like, it can be so kind of complex, so dynamic, so kind of vast or sort of expansive in the terms of like, what that looks like. And I think you kind of honored both of those sides, like pretty tight packaging, but there's a lot in there of just obviously being supportive of students, achieving success in whatever way, shape and form it takes and everything. And that, I mean, that's kind of the hope, is that these sort of like the answers that folks are giving to this question in particular, sort of people can kind of start to sort of like interface and sort of synthesize them to be like, okay, yeah, these are the things that I want to, that resonate with me, that I want to keep top of mind as I'm sort of making decisions about how we're leveraging tools, what tools we're leveraging, and sort of all these sort of things. Because I think there's so much potential and so much opportunity for institutions to be, riding this wave of digital transformation and really getting to a place where, system and processes work well for, faculty and staff and everyone in sort of the administration of an institution, but works just as well for students. And so that, I think there's still so much to see, like you said, obviously, like your institution and so many others have just been kind of beginning on this journey over the past couple of years. So I feel like there's still so much like great stuff to come as time goes on. So really appreciate you hanging out and sharing all that you did. Fellow Scarlet Knight, from different periods of time and everything. But so yeah, we'll have ways to connect with you and keep the conversation going if folks are so interested. But yeah, this is a great chat. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Dustin.
Thanks for listening to The Connected Campus. Please leave a 5-star review for the show and share it so others can discover us. Make sure to also subscribe so you never miss an episode. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you in the next episode of The Connected Campus.